Hey, hi, thank you very much for joining me. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Marvin Mukanaka. If you're joining me for the first time, thank you for coming over. If you're coming for the first time, those of you that have been watching me consistently, thanks for your support. And which brings us to the issue of subscription. If you've not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please subscribe. Your support is highly valued and anticipated. It will go a long way in enabling certain things. Another thing you should do is like the video and share it. Let the messages go wide, far and wide. And send comments. Send educative comments so we can exchange ideas and be able to educate each other. As I always say, when I'm here teaching or sharing information, I'm equally learning. It's equally an opportunity for me to learn and to grow. Once again, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Marvin Mukanaka, your loyal friend, your faithful friend. An interesting piece of sharing today, interesting subject. Today, I've made a bold statement in the past saying that racism covers the whole earth, covers the whole world. There's global systemic racism everywhere. There's not a single place that you will go to where you find these sentiments or systems or forms of discrimination, particularly against black people. Now, this forum, we don't only speak for black people alone, but we speak for everyone else who's discriminated against or marginalized. But we all know that the biggest victims of racial discrimination and systemic racism are the so-called black people. And at some point in the near future, I'm going to give you the reasons why I think black people are hated the most. Spotlight today goes on to Israel, of all countries in the world or on earth. The spotlight today is on Israel, as I promised in one of my previous presentations and videos that I did, that I would take a look at the case of Israel. Why is there racism in Israel? You might not believe it, or you're hearing this for the first time, but there is racism in Israel, especially against dark-skinned people who are so-called black people. Why would this be the case? And I remind you once again, as we get deep into this, I have a book called Beloved Hatred. Check it out on Amazon, Goodreads, Barnes & Noble, Target. It's on many outlets and different platforms, also on the internet or online. You can purchase it, a physical copy or an ebook. It makes very, very interesting reading. My upcoming book also, White Legacy, will be widely available, and I'll keep you updated in terms of the developments and what's coming ahead as I make way and make plans for the launch of that book. It's going to be a bombshell. It will reveal a lot of things that we need to know in the times that we're in to be able to move along with the winds of change that are coming. There's a shift of power that is happening. Some people call it the Black Renaissance. But if you really just pay attention, the signs are very clear that things are shifting. While the rest of the world is crumbling, Africa is rising. It will not be an easy thing. It won't be a walk in the park for Africa to get back to the place that it used to, but it's happening. There's going to be many, many challenges, and Africa will go quite through difficult times before we get to the place that God wants us to be. But today, like I said, I'm addressing the issue of the fact that there's racism in Israel. And this goes to show you that when you have racism or a problem or injustice in a particular location or a small place, it's going to spread everywhere. And that's why I like to make reference to the great words of one of the greats of the civil rights movement or social justice, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. May his soul rest in peace. What a blessing of a man that he was, that ever walked the face of the earth. He said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And now we're crossing over into the Holy Land, and we're finding out that there's discrimination, racial discrimination, in what is called the Holy Land today. How did this come to be? So, without wasting much time, let me show you a clip of what I am saying, and then I'll come back and make conclusions. When I came across this piece of news that at some point in history, Israel discriminated against Ethiopian black Jews, women, who were made to believe that they were being inoculated against disease, but they were actually being injected with birth control so that they would not give birth. And the reason behind that is so that the black population does not increase in Israel. You heard me right. So that the black population does not increase in Israel. This is something that has been done in America, in South Africa, and in many different places. And Israel is not an exception. But would you believe that Israel, of all places, would be a country that would do a thing like this to other races, but in this particular case, to black people? Which raises the question yet again, why are so-called black people hated everywhere? And somewhere down my teachings, you will find the answer. It's a straightforward answer as to why black people are hated. But anyway, let's take a look at this clip and I'll come back and we'll talk some more.
Contraceptive shots so they wouldn't reproduce because they are the wrong color.
Y'all, I had to go look this up, and it's absolutely true. Israel was forcing sterilization on Ethiopian women without their knowledge. They thought they were getting, inoculations against disease, before they entered the country. And they did this because of their race. Seen here, they were given to reduce the number of births in a community that is black and mostly poor. And if they refused the rejection, they were not allowed to enter the country. I am so glad that so much truth is coming out.
So Israel has a twofold immigration problem these days. First of all, there's refugees from Sudan that are in the country, and there's been a lot of agitation over that. Israelis protesting, marching, sometimes yelling at Sudanese women and men and calling them a lot of bad words. Basically say, Sudanese, go home, you're not welcome here, you're criminals. In one instance, shouting at them, you're whores, etc. Now, of course, there's an irony there. Israel was created because nobody would take in the Jews during the Holocaust. So that seems like an excellent justification, and the one that is used most often, understandably so, right? Now, the Sudanese have not been treated well, not just in Sudan, the ones that are fleeing, but also in Egypt and other Muslim countries as well. And a lot of them are Christian, and they're fleeing because they're being persecuted because of religious reasons. Now, you would hope that of all the countries in the world, Israel would understand that best. But that's actually the least of their immigration problems. They also have 130,000 Ethiopians. Now, in this case, the Ethiopians are Jewish, so it doesn't really matter. It's a Jewish state, so they should be welcome, right? Well, not exactly. The health ministry has just admitted that they were doing forced sterilization of Ethiopian women, even though they're Jewish, as they were coming into the country. Now, thank God the sterilization is not permanent, but it did last for a long time. In fact, over the last 10 years, the birth rate among Ethiopians in Israel has dropped by 50%. Now, you don't have to speculate as to why. As I just told you, Israel's health minister has admitted they did the program, and in fact, he sent out a note saying not to renew prescriptions for Depo-Provera for women of Ethiopian origin if for any reason there is concern that they might not understand the ramifications of the treatment. I don't think the issue was that they didn't understand the ramifications of the treatment. The issue was, as they were coming in, they were told they had to get that shot. Sometimes they were lied to and said, oh, yeah, it's a vaccination and it's going to help you with your health. One of the women that were interviewed, the 30 different ones saying the same thing, was quoted as saying, quote, they told us they are inoculations. They told us people who frequently give birth suffer. We took it every 3 months. We said we didn't want to. Look, Israel's not the only country with racism. I mean, look at the United States of America. We had slavery here, and problems of racism still exist in this country, as well as many other countries. But that is really embarrassing. I mean, if you're going to be a Jewish state and then you do this to fellow Jews, what, just because they're African? because they're black. Oof. The people of Israel should be livid over that. And I wish they were also livid over the Sudan situation. Unfortunately, a poll out is really frightening. 52% of Israelis say that African asylum seekers are, quote, a cancer. That's 52%, that's the majority. And 1/3 of Israelis said that they support violent attacks on Africans seeking asylum. That is a terrible number. Terrible. There's a lot that could be improved upon in all the different countries in the world, including the
Ethiopian immigrants are poor and have little education. They arrived here as part of a program to fly all the remaining Jews out of Ethiopia. But some women say they were coerced into taking injections every 3 months for birth control.
At the meeting, they said, you don't need to give birth so many times. If you give birth a lot, you will suffer in life. You need a job in Israel. So we said, if that's true, we will never be able to get out of here. So we took the shot.
The Israeli government has confirmed the drug Depo-Provera was used on some Ethiopian women. The drug acts as a long-term birth control, but the method is usually a last resort for doctors because of problems treating its side effects.
We don't have any policy regarding using of these drugs. As I said, the Minister of Health does not issue guidelines, neither in Ethiopia nor in Israel, what drug to use.
Activists are calling for an investigation into the use of the contraceptive when the women were in transit camps in Ethiopia and also in Israel. There are around 120,000 Ethiopian Jews in Israel. Many of them live in these underprivileged areas and struggle to integrate. But leaders of their community say that over the last 10 years, the number of births of Ethiopian Jews has dropped by half. Some human rights groups say Depo-Provera could be the reason. It can take a long time to become fertile again after taking this drug.
We need to see if it was intentional, if there was a policy saying that we want or need to reduce the birth rate of Ethiopian women, and this needs to be inquired.
Ethiopian Jews arrive in Israel hoping to start a family and have a better life. But many women now feel the state has been controlling their fertility.
This also is in line with a video that I did where I talked about racism in Brazil, and I made heavy reference to our African brother, Wodemaya, who did a wonderful program in Brazil, finding out how racism is common also in Brazil, how dark-skinned people who own the land and have built the land still are marginalized and put in a corner where they're impoverished. And you still find the same thing in a country like Israel, where you would where you would expect to find peace and love and acceptance, but it's the opposite. That's part of the reason why I'm bringing this video to you. And all of this material will push us towards certain actions or remedies that we have to come up with in order to see to it that justice is served. And by justice is really, I'm talking about a push towards finding lasting solutions that will bring equity into communities. I really believe that the church in particular should be forefront in addressing this kind of injustice. I believe that this itself is the gospel. So as we get into this subject today, I want to give you a little bit of a background, and I don't know if I've given this background before. With regards to my standing or my understanding of Israel today, I came from a place about 10 years ago, maybe 12 years thereabout, where I was still in my country before I started residing in the US. I was still in my country of Zambia, where I saw a lot of activity to do with Israel. You know, Zambian people, black Zambian people were waving flags, they were having meetings and teachings and things like that. They were learning how to speak Hebrew and just a number of activities, and which was characterized by the blowing of the shofar, waving of Israel flags, and just a number of other activities related to the same. And at that time, I felt in my spirit, I really felt a voice say to me, that's not the Israel the Bible is talking about. And because I'm a person that is very careful, I like to apply caution in everything, I had to get a hold of myself and say, look, I don't know what it is that's giving me this conviction, or whether it's a voice. And I dismissed it. But usually when my conscience isn't clear about something, I don't involve myself. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter how religious, how holy, how right a thing looks. If my conscience is not clear, if my conscience is telling me something that I need to look at, then I don't get involved. So since that time, I never got involved in anything that had to do with Israel. But I needed to get more understanding. And the understanding did not begin to come until after about 5-6 years after I had settled down in America. And you won't believe that the journey I took towards finding out some of the things I'm about to share was, I was first confronted by a Mexican woman, Mexican Latino woman, all right, who obviously doesn't look like me. She looks more like a white person. And she told me to say, the original Jews, or the Hebrews, original Hebrews, are black people. It's you people. She was telling me. And I'm telling you, at that point, I almost flipped on my head. I literally said in my heart, what demon does this woman have? I immediately dismissed her. But 2 more people told me that afterwards. And then I came back to the same woman, and then she asked me a question. She said, well, do you read the Bible? I said, yes, of course I read the Bible. I wanted to look like I'm very Bible educated. And then she said, so when you read Deuteronomy 28, and it talks about people who are sent into slavery from Africa, who do you think it's talking about? Because those are the Hebrews. The Hebrews were sent into slavery from Africa in Deuteronomy 28. And it was the first time I really started to give this subject very serious attention. I just felt convicted at that moment that I needed to take this seriously and do some investigation. And for the last 3 years or so, the investigations I've done have brought quite a lot of question marks around what we've traditionally been taught in church, or maybe even in school. But take note that our education systems, particularly in Africa, maybe it's different in other places, but they don't really teach us the real history. They don't teach us the real history. And so I had to take a deep dive into history. And so finding out these, let me give you just 13 things that I've found out so far. And this is just a drop in the ocean. So first of all, when you think about the fact that Jews hate Jesus, that's number one. Because here now we're trying to figure out who are the actual chosen people of God. Who are the chosen people of God? And those of you who might be thinking, why do we have to talk about this? This is not important. It's like what people say about the color of Jesus, or the race that Jesus was. People say it's not important, it's not relevant. I will explain to you why it's relevant. But anyway, the first thing that I began to find out about the land of Israel is, number one, the fact that they hate Jews generally in Israel. And number two, the fact that they hate black people. The racism, the apartheid. That's number two. Number three, it's how the land was searched, how the land search was conducted before the Jews settled back in the so-called promised land. And I'm going to do videos on each of these subjects that I'm listing right now. And on the third one, when you think about the land search, how the land search was conducted, would you believe that there was even the possibility of the Jews settling in Uganda, in the Kenya-Uganda area? That's one of the regions that they looked at, searched the land, and they didn't like it, and they went and looked somewhere else until they landed in the land that was called Palestine at the time, which is where they're settled right now as the promised land. So question marks there. But the fourth one is the fact that the Bible, there's quite a number of scholars if you look up your resources on different platforms, there's quite a number of scholars that actually indicate that the Bible prophecy in Jeremiah chapter 9 verse 11 says that when God destroys Jerusalem, it shall be a habitation of jackals. Nobody will live there. And they claim that right now, Jerusalem is a desolate place where only jackals live. It's like a wilderness. Which makes sense because there are even some Jewish rabbis, who say that the Torah forbids them from rebuilding Jerusalem. So we'll do a deep dive on that in a different video. And then the reason number 5, or point number 5, would be, you will not find a record anywhere that God spoke to these Jews when they were going to settle down in Israel, which is the land of Palestine. There's no record anywhere. And yet when you look in scripture, God always spoke to someone about where the Israelites were going to settle, or whatever it is the Israelites were going to do. When he gave them the promised land, he spoke to Moses. After Moses died, God raised Joshua, and he was giving them specific instructions. The movement or the settling down of these Jews that we know now, who have told us they are Jews in the land that we've been told is Israel. There's no record that God said anything to them. So as far as I'm concerned, God never spoke to them, and God doesn't speak to them. That's extremely strange. That is a serious red flag right there. Your reason number 6 would be, there's no record of the Exodus. When Jews were expelled from that land, there's no record whatsoever. There's an author that you can look up. His name is Shlomo Sand. He used to be a white Jew, and he's written a book entitled Why I Stopped Being a Jew. And then he's also written another book called The Making of the Jewish People. And in those books, he raises questions as to, if this exodus of people who were kicked out from that land, if that happened, where are the records? So in all his research while living in Israel, he never found any records whatsoever to indicate that those people were expelled from that land and now they're coming back. There are no records. And we know that these people are very good at keeping records. But why isn't there a record? That's one thing that he questions. And then you have number 7, DNA testing in Israel is illegal. DNA testing in Israel is illegal. Now, DNA testing would prove that those people originated in that land, but they've made it illegal in that land. And I'll show you clips when you do this particular video of some people who call themselves Jews who've done DNA tests, and the DNA tests have shown them that they have nothing to do with that land. We'll deal with that when you come and make that video. And then number 8 would be, look at how small the piece of land is when you just look at the map of the world. And I've been asking myself, is God insane that all those people, according to the promise he gave to Abraham, that you will not be able to count your children? There will be such a multitude like the sand of the sea. Do you honestly think that God would fit them in that tiny piece of land there? So that's number 8. Number 9 would be, that region was changed by the British. That region where Israel is actually Africa. It's North Africa. And there's geographical evidence to prove that, and I'll bring that in the video when we tackle with this subject. It's not Middle East, it's North Africa. It was changed to change the demographics and the mapping of that region to justify the fact that the place is not in Africa. But Israel is actually in the land of Africa. Okay? Then number 10. I find this quite disturbing because during the transatlantic slave trade, white Jews owned slaves. They were among the white people who owned slaves and mistreated slaves and did everything abominable towards black people. That's your reason number 10. Number 11 is that even when you look at maps, if you just Google maps, especially the 1588 map, which was done by an Italian cartographer, is they literally show and name parts where Jews used to live in Africa. And the map of 1588 is a classic example of that. All of this information is on the internet. All right? Then your reason number 8 would be, I beg your pardon, number 12. This is number 12 now, right? I'm losing count because there's a lot of reasons really. But the Egyptian president, Nasser, when Jews settled down, the white Jews settled in the land that is called Israel today, he made a statement. He said, you will never have peace in that land because you left black and you came back white. We'll talk about that when we do that particular video on that. The last reason I'll give is this, number 13, is Israel supports 100% the LGBTQ community and movement globally. So they encourage that behavior. Now, for a people that are chosen by God, I don't know what that means. I really don't. That the children of God would support everything that God is against, including the owning of slaves in the transatlantic slave trade. But anyway, let's move on, because these things, we're going to tackle them one by one. There are really so many reasons. I want to now move forward and talk about the racism that is current now in Israel, and then leave you to make your own conclusion. I'm sure that by the time we finish all these videos, it's a lot of videos to make, you will have enough information to be able to make up your own mind. I'm not here to convince you about anything. I'm here to simply give you the information. It's like police when they're investigating a crime, all they get is leads. They get information from people, and that information gives them leads. I'm just giving you leads here, and it will be up to you to make up your own mind, because you need information.